Hello, everyone. I just want to welcome you to my final project, my presentation in History 100. My name is Benjamin Lindsay. I'm thankful for this opportunity, and I would like to continue on, so thank you so much. Let's start. So, there are many historical lenses that we can use to analyze history. Historical lenses are different ways that we can look at and analyze history. When we learn about history from multiple perspectives, we can begin to see the whole picture so that we can learn from those who came before us. Historical lenses are helpful in the sense that we can start to piece history together, like a puzzle. History gets a lot of backlash at times. Some people say that historians are biased and they only say what they want to say, and that only the winners are the ones that we get to hear from in ancient times. But the truth is that what we can do with all of these different opinions and different perspectives on history is that we can learn from them. We can piece them all together and try to get the full picture so that we can see what happened and then learn from it and see what we can pull from it from our own perspective. So certain types of historical lenses include military, social, political, scientific, etc. The topic that I have chosen for this final presentation is how is the use of nuclear warfare an unacceptable, inhumane, and unethical form of warfare after what we have learned from the atomic bombings in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I spent a lot of time thinking about how I was going to word this question and throwing in the word after in this question. A lot of what was understood at the time in World War II about the bombs was very limited. It had only been tested once before it was used on people. And it was really a test run in a lot of ways, as horrible as that sounds, on humans. Hiroshima and Nagasaki, we'll talk about this later, how they were kind of the guinea pigs for the world to see what would happen. And though they didn't fully understand, we now understand. And that's why I use the word after. So let's continue on. We will be looking at this topic from three specific historical lenses: military, scientific, and social. We will look at how nuclear warfare is unacceptable after what we know from the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki from these historical lenses. As I go through these, we can analyze this and get a feeling for what it was like in those times. There was a lot of fear back then, a lot of distrust, and we can now take what happened and learn from it. So hopefully we don't repeat the mistakes of the past. So the first one I want to address is the military lens. Thousands of innocent lives were lost to send a military message from the United States to Japan. The first call to action from the United States to Japan included asking Japan to surrender. Japan did not comply because they wanted to maintain their emperor. Later on, the United States modified their call for Japan to surrender. But it wasn't until after the bombings that the message was sent and received by everyone. Or for the most part, there are many that disagreed. The United States asserted military dominance, seeking to force Japan to surrender. And the reason I use the word dominance is I'd like to read words from President Henry Truman of a message that he sent out to the people of Japan after the bombings of Hiroshima. He said, "Because of your leaders' refusal to accept the surrender declaration that would enable Japan to honorably end this useless war, we have employed our atomic bomb. A single one of our newly developed atomic bombs is actually the equivalent in explosive power to what 2,000 of our giant B-29s could have carried in a single mission. Radio Tokyo has told you that with the first use of this weapon, of total destruction, Hiroshima was virtually destroyed. Act at once, or we shall resolutely employ this bomb and all our other superior weapons to promptly and forcefully end the war. One of the words that I want to address in this that I say is somewhat unethical in how it asserts dominance is the word, it is right at the beginning where it says, because of your leaders. This was addressed towards the people. The people were in many ways the victims, and though they were ready to fight and give their lives, it's in many ways, these words kind of pin the blame for the bombings on the people of Japan, which is why it brings me to the topic of how is this ethical? How can we question this part of history? The next lens I want to analyze, the scientific lens, the facts and figures. So the people of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were used as guinea pigs to demonstrate what the atomic bomb could do to people. The United States did not fully understand a lot of what would happen. They had calculated and guessed, which I'll explain more just in a second, but there were some effects, specifically radiation, that they did not understand would happen. Between 220 to 240,000 people were killed by the atomic bomb. Thousands more were injured, many to suffer the rest of their lives. Many of the victims of the atomic bombs would, because of what happened, they would suffer for the rest of their lives from physical impairments. Victims were slaughtered by the stages of what occurs in nuclear blast. So to go through what happens when a bomb explodes and why it should not be used in war, why it is unethical, is because the first thing that happens is the initial blast. The initial blast is hotter than the surface of the sun, and well beyond the temperature it takes to cremate a human body, and it vaporizes human beings. But after the initial blast, those people don't feel pain. It's beyond that where people start to suffer, is where the radiation starts to basically cook and melt people alive. Some died instantly. Many did not. Many suffered greatly from what the United States did to Japan. The next part of its destructive power is the sonic boom. It's when a nuclear bomb explodes, the air around where the epicenter happens needs to go somewhere. It expands. And what it does is it blows buildings to pieces and makes everyday objects turn into shrapnel, killing thousands of people. And once all the rubble is everywhere and the radiation is cooking everything, it's a perfect environment for firestorms. Where when the bombs took place in Hiroshima, luckily not with Nagasaki, but specifically in Hiroshima, fires broke out across the entire city. Many of the victims said that the entire city was on fire, and that there were fire tornadoes that took place from that. Now, the part that was not understood by the U.S. military in full was radiation poisoning. What happens, as you can see in this picture down in the corner, this little animation, you can see the mushroom cloud going up. And what happens with a mushroom cloud is that when it goes up, it begins to condescend with the atmosphere and develop raindrops. Now, these raindrops are these big black raindrops that fall from the sky and basically paint everything black. But it's highly radioactive. And the people of Hiroshima and Nagasaki did not understand this. Because of the heat, they were thirsty or felt thirsty and would drink this black rain, not knowing that weeks later their hair would fall out and they would vomit and they would have diarrhea and would die in horrible, gruesome ways, sometimes slowly, sometimes very quickly, which leads me to question why was this used if we did not fully understand what it could do to people, specifically, and how it could basically become more than just a bomb. It became a new type of warfare. The next part I want to analyze is to give two first-hand accounts of what happened that day. I will go over to these accounts. The first one comes from Yosuka Mikasmi, and he says, or she says, since our order was to help the most heavily injured, we searched for them. We tried to open the eyes of the injured, and we found out they were still alive. We tried to carry them, by their arms and legs, and to place them onto fire trucks, but this was difficult because their skin was peeling off as we tried to move them. They were all heavily burned, but they never complained, but they felt pain even when their skin was peeling off. I feel very sorry for them. I also feel deeply sorry for those who lost their families. I sincerely hope that there would be no more nuclear war. And the next account comes from Akiro Takahashi, who says, out of 60 of junior high school classmates, only 10 of us are alive today. The radiation corroded bodies and killed them. I, myself, am still alive on this earth, suffering after effects of the bomb. I have to see regularly an eye doctor, an ear doctor, an eye doctor, a dermatologist, and a surgeon. I feel uneasy about my health every day. I should fulfill my mission as a survivor. In other words, it has been and is my belief that those who survived must continue to talk about our experience, to hand down the awful memories to future generations, representing the silent voices of those who had to die in misery. Throughout my life, I would like to fulfill this mission by talking about my experience both here in Japan and across seas. This teaches us, just from two of the many accounts of that happened, there were so many horrific things that happened where innocent lives were taken in tragic, inhumane, violent ways. And what can we learn from these lenses? First, the atomic bomb causes such great devastation and destruction to human lives that it should not be used against people. We did not fully understand, but now we do. We have countless records of what an atomic bomb can do to the human body. And it would be wise that we don't implore this again. No side wins when a nuclear weapon is used. Either you suffer the heavy losses or live with their blood on your hands. That's a bit of a dramatic statement, but in many ways it's true. If you listen to the accounts of many of the men who are alive today who are part of that bombing raid, many of them still live with guilt. The use of nuclear bombs is not a solution. It is an excuse to forego negotiations. It should only be used as an absolute last resort, with warnings to civilians to evacuate. This is more of a personal opinion, but this is something that we can learn from the past. What can we learn from this devastation that took place? And how does it apply today in our lives? History is always relevant to our lives. At times, these parallels are very apparent, and other times we need to look for the lesson we can learn. For example, today, in our day, world leaders today have threatened using nuclear bombs to end quarrels flippantly in recent months. This is a serious problem that needs to be addressed. The United States has many of these bombs ready to go, but that does not mean that we need to use them on innocents because we disagree with another person or we don't take the time to understand other people's viewpoint, and vice versa, other countries towards ours. We can either sympathize with the past, or we can have empathy towards those who were affected and learn from our past decisions. In my opinion, history does not repeat itself. It echoes, each event in history adding to the next. History is to be learned from. I have learned that we can take the good things that have happened in the past and improve and build upon them. I have learned that we can learn to not repeat the failures of the past, individually, nationally, and globally. What does our class teach about history repeating itself? I would say that history does not repeat due to contingency. Thomas Andrews and Flannery Brooke wrote, "To argue that history is contingent is to claim that every historical outcome depends upon a number of prior conditions, that each of these prior conditions depends in turn upon still other conditions, and so on. The core insight of contingency is that the world is a magnificently interconnected place. Change a single prior condition and any historical outcome could have turned out differently." I love this perspective about how we learn this in class. There are so many different things that have happened in history, each one leading into the next. We can look at history and think about what it would be like to be in their shoes. Would we have made the same decisions that they made? Would the conversations that they had with the people that they talked to? We may see a nuclear weapon used in the future, but it won't be the same as what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It's different people, it's different contexts, different governments. There's so many different things that take place. So I would say no, history does not repeat, but it does have its similarities, enough that we can learn from the choices that have been made in the past. And the final question, are citizens obligated to know history? And I would actually say no, but it would be wise to do so. I don't think anyone is obligated to know anything, but it's whether or not they learn from what they have taken the time to know. The more we understand history, the more we can learn from those that came before us. The world and the people living on it were here long before we got here. We can learn from them, build from their accomplishments, and learn from their mistakes. Thank you.